With the proliferation of video conferencing for work, education, and just general social interaction has come the bookshelf. Not that there are necessarily more bookshelves now than there used to be, but they're more publicly visible than they've ever been, occupying the backdrop of screens all across the world. It makes sense. A bookshelf and its contents can say a lot about a person without saying anything at all. They can attest to intellectual acumen, cultural awareness, or even wealth and prestige. The bookshelf has become an ideal way to low-key flex without coming across as too braggadocious or overly pretentious, because everyone's doing it. I'm just as guilty. I've been a part of plenty of video conferences right here, and I have to admit I would probably use this as my backdrop even if this wasn't a video specifically about bookshelves, because I don't just use this bookshelf, I built this bookshelf, so I have a special pride in and affinity for this thing. But despite their recent emergence, flexing a bookshelf really isn't anything new. Moreover, one American literary classic, The Great Gatsby, features a brilliant scene of bookshelf envy, but with an ironic twist. In Chapter 3 of The Great Gatsby, Nick Carraway is attending one of Gatsby's outrageous parties. Due to a little embarrassment, he's on his way to getting roaring drunk before running into Jordan Baker. While the music blares outside, Nick and Jordan snoop around the mansion, hoping to get some idea of who this Gatsby fellow is, and discover if the wild rumors swirling around him are true.
A German spy?
No. He's the Kaiser's assassin.
I heard he killed a man once.
It's true.
Kills for fun, free of charge.
He's certainly richer than God.
Eventually, they come to the library and encounter a character identified only as Owl Eyes, marveling at Gatsby's collection of books. The character's name would suggest that he is a reliable and acute observer, but a deeper reading of the text and the references Fitzgerald weaves into it reveals that Owl Eyes is a nickname dripping with irony. At first, Owl Eyes remarks that the books are absolutely real, with pages and everything. He confesses to suspecting they'd be made of cardboard, facsimiles of books for the sake of appearance only, fairly common practice at the time, especially placed on the upper shelves out of reach and judgment. As proof of their realism, Owl Eyes snatches up Volume 1 of Stoddard Lectures, the first in a 15-volume set by John L. Stoddard. This is no casual reference for Fitzgerald to drop, but one imbued with multiple layers of meaning. As Patrick W. Shaw of Texas Tech University observes, far from being absolutely real as Owl Eyes exclaims, the volume is in fact a meretricious, mass-produced book. It is fully bound in fake brown leather, with ersatz gold lettering on the spine. It is hardly appropriate for a rich collector's library in New York. Like all else in Gatsby's life, the volumes of Stoddard's lectures are designed for decoration and show, and they are able to fool only those who are as intrinsically gauche and naive as Gatsby himself. Shaw goes on to note that Stoddard's lectures are essentially just a series of global travel logs, and though several subsequent editions were released after the first publication in 1897, they are really stuck in the 19th century ideologically. For example, they mostly ignore the profound consequences of World War I. You might say that John Stoddard is reflective of J. Gatsby, lost in a superficial but idealized past. While admiring the bona fide piece of printed matter, Owl Eyes declares that Gatsby is a regular Belasco, declaring about his bookshelf and its contents, what thoroughness, what realism. This is an allusion to David Belasco, a prominent figure in American theater who innovated new techniques in lighting and effects to heighten the sense of realism and naturalism on stage. Of course, it's this so-called realism that Owl Eyes is applauding, but the greater irony is that, like Belasco, Gatsby is putting on a show. His house is the stage, and he is the lead actor. Finally, Owl Eyes commends Gatsby for knowing when to stop and not cutting the pages of his books. It's easy for this remark to be lost on contemporary readers. What does it mean to cut the pages of a book? Until more recent developments in printing technology that trimmed the edges of a book to be the same size before binding, books were bound with their pages still folded. So, if a person bought a new book and wanted to read it, they would have to literally cut a page to get to the next one. It's this small detail that belies the most basic truth of Gatsby's bookshelf. Of the hundreds or maybe even thousands of books he possesses, he hasn't actually read them. They exist as a means for Gatsby to try and flex his money and pedigree, but it's all just a facade. So, what about all of our bookshelves that we choose to either flex purposefully or just sit in front of because they're nicer than a blank wall? Well, if you ask me, I'd say that they're just another form of interpersonal communication, a way to say something about ourselves. But there's one thing that we can take away from Fitzgerald's ironic flex of Gatsby's bookshelf. It's this, that what we say and what people actually hear isn't always the same thing, for better or for worse. So here's hoping for the best.